welcome back to Making Stuff with Mrs. Baroody. I'm Mrs. Baroody, and today you're going to make a painting with me. How awesome is that? It's going to be sort of a fall themed painting because we're going to be doing pumpkins, which I know it's kind of snowy outside for some of you, but it's still fall, and I think with Thanksgiving around the corner, a pumpkin painting would be fantastic. So those of you that go to my school, you would have gotten a pack of paint and things from the Finn family crew, and it's going to include a bunch of little paint cups. You're going to have a paintbrush, you're going to have a pencil, you're going to have a water cup, and you're going to have a canvas to paint on, a canvas board really, okay? Some extra things that you might want to do before we get started is you might want to grab a Sharpie marker, especially for the younger kids, this might be important, a plate or a piece of tin foil, something that you can scoop your paint on and put on so we can mix it in here and not in our cups. And then a nice clean work area. So if you know you're a messy painter, like I kind of am, I'm gonna work on a nice piece of cardboard so I don't ruin my table and my husband won't get mad at me. So you might wanna put out some newspaper or some plastic, something so you don't make a big mess. And then some paper towels, you know, just in case, all right? We're gonna start with drawing our pumpkin on our canvas. Now, if you're a younger student, you might need a little help from a grown-up, that's okay. And then I'm gonna show you for the younger kids, maybe a way of tracing it to help them see the lines a little bit better. If you're an older student, have at it. You draw your own pumpkin. I'm gonna show you how to draw my pumpkin. Yours can be different. If you want yours to be taller, fatter, smaller, if you want 2 pumpkins, that's up to you. I'm just kind of giving you the basics and you're gonna make it your own thing, okay? Let's get started. All right, my friends, so this is what we're gonna be painting today. So we're gonna have a nice pumpkin, we're gonna have a little happy saying, and it's gonna look awesome. So number 1, I'm starting with my canvas nice and vertical. So if you're gonna do yours just like mine, nice and vertical should be your canvas. If you wanna change it up and make it horizontal, and you wanna maybe make a tall pumpkin and a short pumpkin, and then write happy fall, that's up to you as well, okay? But I'm gonna do it just like this guy. So I'm gonna move him out of my way so I can concentrate on this canvas. So again, nice and vertical. I have my pencil, he's nice and sharpened, and I have my eraser just in case, all right? When we do this, light lines. We don't want nice dark lines yet, we want light lines. So I'm gonna turn my canvas a little bit, and I'm holding my pencil back here by the end, not the tip, the end where the eraser is. And I'm just gonna eyeball kind of a circular shape, right? Because pumpkins are a little bit circular. So I'm gonna take my pencil, you hear it on the canvas, and I'm gonna make myself a circle. There's the start of my pumpkin, already fantastical. Now pumpkins have these great little lines that come down, right? And they have sort of these curved spots in between the lines. So to do that, I'm gonna start kind of off to the left, because I'm a righty, and I'm gonna make a curved line that follows kind of the curve of my pumpkin. Then I'm gonna skip over a little bit and make another curved line. And now I'm gonna skip over, but this time instead of curving it like a letter C, I'm gonna curve it in the opposite direction, like a backwards letter C. And then I'm gonna do one more. So you should have like 4 or 5 curvy lines. Oakley dokes. Now I'm gonna make this emphasize that shape a little bit more. So that first circle was just a guide. We don't have to keep using that. We can go outside of our line. So I'm gonna start here on this line, and I'm just gonna make a little bit of a lump there. Now I'm gonna start on this line, and I'm gonna make a little bit of a lump that hits the edge of my pumpkin. And now I'm gonna make my line just a little bit darker so I know which is the one I should be following when I paint. And I'm gonna do the same thing over here. Make kind of a lump between these 2 lines, a lump between these 2 lines, and you can make it as lumpy bumpy as you want. Maybe your pumpkin isn't that lumpy, totally fine. And then I'm gonna do the same thing on the bottom. Not as big, because our pumpkin is gonna be sitting on a table or something. All right, so now we have our pumpkin shape. At any point in this video, you guys can pause to work on yours. Remember, I'm awesome. I have painted so many pumpkins, so I'm gonna do this really quickly. So if you wanna pause now, get your outline done, and then unpause for the next step, okay? The next step is going to be the stem. Now on this one, I have my stem kind of going off to the right, and it's just kind of a rectangular shape, right? So I'm gonna start in the middle-ish of my pumpkin, make kind of a curved line, and bring it back. Okay, now I don't have lots of room up here for my happy fall anymore. So I might leave this space nice and blank so I can fit my happy fall over there. If your pumpkin's a lot shorter, you might have a lot more room so you could maybe make your stem a little bit bigger or give yourself another leaf or something. So now I'm gonna add my leaf. And this is, I know you guys have drawn leaf shapes before. It's sort of like an oval with a pointy end. Now, no one's gonna see our pencil lines when we're all done. So for me, it's so much easier to just draw the whole leaf, and then we're gonna erase some lines instead of trying to make the leaf outside of the stem. So the leaf is behind the stem. So if this is the leaf and this is the stem's gonna cover up some of that leaf. So again, I'm gonna start in the middle, kind of make a pointy, teardroppy shape. And there we go. We have our leaf. I am gonna erase this line just so it doesn't confuse us later with my fancy eraser. Okay, now this, for the older kids, you should be fine and dandy to go. But for the younger kids, my experience says they might get a little gloppy with their paint and they're gonna lose their pencil lines. So a grown-up or an older sibling or somebody might wanna come through with a Sharpie marker and trace over those lines. We are gonna eventually make them black anyway, so it's okay that we see some black through there. So I'm gonna trace my pumpkin just so you guys can see it a little bit easier. And so maybe some of those little kids are okay with you guys tracing it. So I'm being very careful and nice and slow. Sharpie marker is gonna be a little hard to cover up. So this is why maybe a grown-up or an older sibling, this would be a good idea for them to trace this. Because my younger Fin students, you guys have tiny hands, you're still learning how to use all your muscles. You might make a mistake and then you'd be sad. We don't want sad faces with our pumpkin painting. All right, there's the other edge of my pumpkin. Is it perfect? No, and that's okay because we're gonna paint over it and no one's gonna know if we made a mistake. So I did my stem, I did my leaf. We are not worried about the curlicues. Curlicues are gonna come at the end. Whenever we paint things, we work from the back to the front and we work big to small. So these things, they're small details. We don't need them right now. So here's my pumpkin. How cute is that? Now I'm ready to paint. For our background, all around our pumpkin, we're gonna paint a light blue color, okay? So I'm going to start with some white and some blue. Some of you might have little cups like this because we ran out of these ones. No worries, you can still scoop the paint out of there. So I'm gonna open up my white paint, and when I'm not using it, I'm gonna put the lid back on because we don't want it to dry out. So the reason we're scooping paint out of here is because we're gonna need this white for other colors, and we don't want it to just be all light blue. So you can see how I'm taking some little scoops out of my paint cup and just kind of smushing them on my plate. I have a pretty good eyeball for this, so I'm gonna go with maybe like 5 or 6 scoops. And then I'm gonna put the lid back on my cup, and then I'm gonna rinse my brush off. Why am I rinsing my brush off? Because now I have to get some blue, and if I don't rinse it off, my whole blue is gonna be yucky. So I like to give it a swirl on the bottom, make sure it's nice and clean. Not quite clean yet. There we go. And this is where your paper towel comes in handy because we don't want our brush to be too wet. Give it a little blot. And now we're gonna grab our blue paint. Now this blue paint's already pretty light. And I'm gonna take probably 6 or 7 scoops again. Try not to get it too far up the brush. Ooh, it matches my handle, look at that. We want it really just on the bristly part of our brush. So that's pretty good. And we don't have to rinse because we're gonna keep using the blue. Now, this is where we get fancy. So I'm gonna start on the left side of my canvas and I'm gonna work all the way around my pumpkin. I'm gonna be very careful not to get the blue inside the orange because blue and orange, they're not friends. When they mix together, it's not gonna look very nice. So I have a lot of paint on my brush. I'm gonna try and scrape some of it off, maybe on my paper towel. Okay, now here's where we get fancy. I'm gonna put my brush in the white and I'm gonna put it in the blue. So now I have blue and white on my brush. And now I'm gonna add it to the background. And I don't need to be super neat except when I'm right next to the pumpkin. So I'm gonna take my brush and kind of make X's with the paint. So then it gives it a really interesting background. So I've run out of paint. Now I'm gonna go back and get just blue, no white this time. And I'm gonna keep going with some of the blue. So some parts will be darker and some parts will be lighter. It'll look really interesting. When I get close to the pumpkin, I'm gonna start at my line and I'm gonna move out from my pumpkin. This way, hopefully, I won't get any blue inside my pumpkin. And then I can take my brush and kind of smooth it back in with the background. and you don't even know it's there. So again, I'm starting at the line and dragging out from the pumpkin. And then I'm making my little X's and crisscrosses so it looks nice and textury like the rest of the background, okay? And you're gonna keep doing this all the way around your pumpkin. I'm gonna switch to fast forward so you guys can watch me do this, but you can also pause it, finish painting yours, and then come back and see where we're at, okay? All right, so who's ready for the next step? We are gonna paint our pumpkin this lovely yellowy orange color. And this is again where you kind of have a choice. You can make it as yellowy or as orangey as you want, okay? So if you wanna use just your straight up orange and make it a bright orange pumpkin, go for it. I like it if there's a couple different colors in there because I think it looks just a little bit more realistic and more interesting. So again, I'm gonna take my paintbrush and I'm gonna scoop some orange off of my plate. And because I'm smart, I notice I still have a lot of blue and white left over from the background. And the pumpkin's about the same area, so I'm not gonna need that much orange. And then you have all this extra orange paint for another project. No wasting. Put my lid on it so it doesn't get all crunchy. Giving my brush a little rinse. And before you start this part, please make sure that your blue background is dry, because if it's not, and you start painting orange next to it, it's gonna smear into your pumpkin and it's not gonna look very nice. Gonna blot it dry a little bit. Now I'm gonna get a little bit of yellow, and I still have some white on my plate, so I might use a little bit of that white too for Mr. Pumpkin. So a couple of scoops, maybe 3. And again, you can mix this on your plate. So if you wanna mix just one orangey yellow color, you could take your brush and do some stirring right here. But I like mixing on my canvas because 1, it's more fun, and 2, it's sort of like a surprise. You don't know what you're gonna get when you get it on there. So I'm gonna just wipe off my brush. I'm wiping it off on my paper towel just to get some of the extra paint off. And now, just like before, I'm gonna grab a little bit of orange and a little bit of yellow. And this time we don't need a lot. I didn't scoop it like ice cream, just a little bit of a dunkaroo, okay? Now, my paintbrush, it's a flat paintbrush. So if I hold it like this, I'm gonna have a nice wide brush stroke. If I hold it on the side like this, I'm gonna have a skinnier brush stroke, and I'll be able to get into my corners a little bit easier. So this is for fat, this is for skinny. And again, I'm gonna start here on the left because I'm a righty, and I'm always kind of pulling my paintbrush. I'm never pushing it because then our bristles are, and they get yucky, and then our brush isn't any good anymore. So I try and always pull the paint. And look at that yellow and orange in there. Let's grab a little bit of white, why not? And I'm holding it on the side and I'm pulling it along that edge. And I don't mind that I see a little black still, because remember, we're gonna outline this later. It's all good in the hood. Now I'm gonna switch over to nice and fat. Get a little bit more orange, a little bit more yellow. Now the reason I am going section by section. If I just went like this with my paintbrush, when I was done, my pumpkin wouldn't look very round, okay? If we follow each shape very carefully and color in each section, 1, those of you that didn't do Sharpie markers, you'll be able to see your lines a little better. And 2, it helps that pumpkin look round. So I finished that section. I'm gonna do the next one. Grab a little orange, a little yellow. Now, if you want to get fancy and make it look even more realistic, you could do nice light yellowy orange and then make it darker as you go over. That'll make it look a little more 3-dimensional. So that's like the light is coming from over here, and then there's not a lot of light on the other side. But you do you. It's your pumpkin. You can see that white goes a long way, doesn't it? Really lightens up that orange and yellow. And we don't want glops. See how I have a glop and I'm smoothing it out? I don't get more paint on my brush until I've kind of run out and everything's nice and smooth. Then I go back and get a little bit more paint on my brush. Now remember, I'm awesome. I've done this a lot. I'm gonna paint way faster than you, and that's okay. So you can always pause this at any time, keep painting, come back to it. You can fast forward until the next step. Work at your comfort level. Oakley dokes. Now I'm just gonna keep painting my pumpkin, and I'm gonna switch over to my fast forward again, because I don't think you guys wanna watch me do this for the next 10 minutes, okay? So this is a good time to pause, keep painting, and I'll meet you back at the end of our orange time lapse. Oakley dokes. My fantastic painters, you can see we have our orange part and our blue part done. So next we're going to work on our leaf and our stem, then we'll talk details. So we're going to do our leaf first because it's behind the stem. So we want to do the background first. We always move back to front. So we're going to do this. Now we didn't give you green, wahaha, because you have plenty of paint here to make green. So those of you that have had me, you better remember this. Green is made by yellow and blue. And if you want it to be a lighter green, you can always add some white. So I like to start with the yellow because it's the lighter color. Blue's a little bossier. So I'm gonna take a little bit of my yellow and way less blue. And then I'm gonna mix it together on my plate, tiny little stirs. This is one of those times where mixing it on the plate makes a little bit more sense. And you can see we're starting to have a nice green color. I think I might need a little bit more yellow, just a little bit more blue, and I'm gonna grab a little white, because why not? And I'm gonna go with a nice, light, limey kind of green color. And I have a nice light green. I'm gonna scrape off some of that extra paint, and now I'm gonna paint my leaf. And again, just like before, we wanna kind of work out away from that line so we don't get our green into our stem or our pumpkin. And I'm gonna go nice and slow. There is no rush, it's not a race. No one's gonna know how fast you painted your painting. Grab a little bit more green. Now, if your color is too light, or you can really see your canvas through it, or your pencil lines aren't getting covered up, let it dry and add another layer on. That's the best part about this acrylic paint. So let's say I get this green on, and in a minute when it dries, I say, oh, gross. I don't like this green at all. I just let it dry, and then I paint right over it again. Remember, we're always pulling our paintbrush. We're never pushing it because we don't want to ruin our bristles. All right, I'm pretty happy with that green. I think it looks pretty good. Now, for the stem, we also didn't give you any brown. Mwahaha. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. When we mix complementary colors, we get kind of a yucky brown color. And you happen to have two complementary colors in your painting, orange and blue. Always reminds me of Syracuse. So I'm rinsing my brush off, and I'm gonna mix my orange and blue together. So I'm gonna move my pumpkin out of the way for a second. So this is gonna take some experimentation. I can't tell you the exact ratio of blue to orange. So I'm just gonna start with equal-ish parts, mix those bad boys together. Ew, right? Look how brown and yucky it's looking. Ugh. Okay, so I still think it looks a little bluey. I don't know if I love this brown color. So one way to maybe make it a little different is to grab some yellow. Let's see what that does. I'm liking that a little better. And then you also have black. Now this is for outlining, and black is a very bossy color because it's so dark. Just like white's kind of bossy and makes things light, the black's gonna make things dark. And I should rinse my brush off before I get this, but I'm gonna be naughty and get just a little bit of black along the edge. I'm gonna mix it into my weird brown color. I think I'm getting there. I'm kind of liking this kind of gray brown color. Maybe I'll grab a little bit more orange, see what that does. Making tiny little stirs. We want a puddle, not a lake. All right, I think I kind of like that brown color. All right, so it took a few colors mixed together, but I think I have a brown that I like. So now I'm gonna paint the stem. Be a little careful if your leaf is still wet. Be careful that you're not smearing into your green leaf. And take your time. This is a color that might need 2 coats because we didn't add any white to it. White likes to make things not so see-through-y or transparent. And this is a little thin and transparent looking. So if you want another layer, go for it. And there we have our pumpkin, our leaf, and our stem. Voila. The last couple of steps is number one, we need to make some green twirly whirlies for our vines. And then we're gonna outline things and write our words. So for our green twirly whirlies, we still have some of this green left over. So I'm gonna rinse my brush off. If you have fancy brushes at home and you have a round or a pointy brush, this might be a good one for you to use that, but I'm gonna use what everyone has just to help you guys out. So you could use a pencil first and draw in your twirly whirlies. Now remember, I'm gonna put happy fall up here in this area. So I don't wanna put too many vines up there. In this one, I made a vine that went all the way up, and then I made one that went down. If you love your pumpkin and you don't want any twirly whirlies, then you don't have to have any. I think the best thing for this is to just go for it, okay? If you use pencil and you make a mistake, we can always go back and cover it up a little bit with our paint. So I'm gonna start here at the stem, because that's where the vines would come from, and I'm gonna make a twirly whirly one that kind of comes down this way on my pumpkin. And I'm just gonna go for it and hope, yep, it looks like everything's dry. So twirly, whirly. There we go. There's my twirly whirly. Now I was brave, I just went and did it. If you want a grown-up to help you out, that would be probably a good idea. Now this is where things could get complicated. If I hold my brush like this, I'm gonna have a fat vine. So I wanna hold my brush like this so I have a skinny vine. So I'm gonna get some of my, oh, my green dried out. Hold please. Gotta mix up a little bit more green because it dried out a little bit. I wanna be careful I don't have too much paint on my brush though. Look at that, practically perfect match. Go me. Okay, getting some of the paint off my brush. And now I'm gonna follow my line very slowly and carefully. And you can see I'm holding the brush kind of nice up and tall, and I'm turning it carefully with my hands and my fingers, so it's always making sort of a skinnier line. And I only go a little bit before I gotta go get some more paint. That's okay. I kind of like this color, the nice light limey green next to my orange. Now, grown-ups, this is where there's a part where you're gonna wanna take over. And I'm gonna tell you no, don't do it. This is your scholar's painting. If their twirly whirly is all crazy and wild, that's okay. They have a crazy and wild pumpkin. If it's perfectly straight and awesome, then that's fine too. This is their pumpkin. If you wanna paint a pumpkin, we got lots of extra paint. You can paint your own pumpkin. But scholars, if you're having trouble and your parents or an older sibling say, hey, do you want some help? It's okay to say yes. It's okay to say, yeah, I'm having some trouble. Will you help, please? I do that with my mom all the time. Sometimes there's something I'm not quite getting. My mom's awesome and she helps me out. So there's my little twirly whirly. I'm not gonna do one up here because that's where my words are gonna go, but I could do another twirly whirly over in this area if I wanted to. Actually, this kind of looks like a cursive L, doesn't it? Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna put my brush in my water. I'm gonna let this dry for a minute, and then I'm gonna show you how to outline and do your words. All right, guys, so my painting is just about dry, and you wanna wait for the same thing on yours. I'm gonna make sure that my brush is rinsed really well, so giving it a good scrubby scrub on the bottom. We don't want any colors in there. And then we're gonna make sure that it's quite dry. We don't want it to be drippy, okay? And now we're gonna outline. For this, you have a choice. If you wanna use your black paint, which is what I recommend, I'm gonna show you how to do it with your brush. If you wanna cheat a little bit and you have that Sharpie marker around, you could outline with your Sharpie marker. Number one, if your paint is wet, it's not gonna work, so make sure it's dry. Number two, it's probably gonna eat up your Sharpie because your canvas has got some texture on it. So if you wanna cheat a little bit and use the Sharpie marker, just know that you're probably not gonna use that for anything else after this project. But I'm gonna use our black paint. Because I outlined it with Sharpie at the beginning, I can still see my lines. So those of you that lost your lines a little bit, hopefully you painted inside each section so you can kind of see them a little bit better. And you can see over here that I covered up some of my line with my Swirly Twirly. That's okay. I'm gonna start on the easier side. So for me, that's the one without any swirly twirlies. And because I'm a righty, I'm gonna turn my canvas. So now I'm painting here and I'm not smearing. If I started over here and painted, I'm gonna smear with my hand. So I'm gonna get just a little bit of paint on the end of my brush. Definitely not a time for scoop and ice cream. Just a little dunky dunk, Oreo and milk, donut and coffee, ciabatta bed and some tomato soup, whatever you prefer. And I'm gonna hold it nice and straight up and down like I did over here with my Swirly Twirly. And I like to kind of pull my lines towards myself, but if you wanna kind of pull them away, that's fine. But remember, we're not pushing, and we don't wanna hold our brush like this. Unless you want some really fat lines, go for it. I'm gonna hold mine nice and sideways. So I'm gonna start here on the left, nice and slow, and I'm gonna outline my pumpkin. Now, the harder you press down, the more your bristles are gonna go out and the fatter your line is. So this is a time, my friends, for nice, soft, gentle, mouse, muscly sort of movements. Now this is a time if you make a mistake, it's a little bit hard to come back from. So if you're a little person and you're a little afraid of the outlining, absolutely ask your grown-up to help. Oh no, I dripped a little bit right there. What am I gonna do? I'm just gonna spread it out a little bit and I'll paint over it in a second. Not the end of the world. Unless something blows up or catches on fire, we can pretty much fix anything. Now remember, we're trying to go on our black line. So over here, I can see a little bit of my blue. That's not good. Just gonna cover it up a little bit with my black. And I'm gonna keep going around my pumpkin. Remember, I've done this a lot. I'm gonna go faster than you, and that's okay. So at any point you need to pause to catch up, go for it. I just get so excited about this part that sometimes I go too fast and I do make mistakes. So I gotta calm down a little bit, Mrs. Baroody. Take your time. Now I think I had a little too much paint on my brush, so I wiped it off on my paper towel. And now my bristles are nice and clean again. Grabbing a little bit more paint. Excuse me. Now, this is where things get tricky. I don't want to paint over my Swirly Twirly because that's in front of my pumpkin. Okay, so I'm gonna paint my line, stop at the Swirly Twirly, and then keep going. So I'm gonna start here at the bottom, stop, skip over, and then keep on cruising. Look at that skinny, skinny line. That one was so good. Now our bristles are starting to get a little wonky. Just be careful, it's okay if you got a stray black line here or there because we end up adding a few black lines anyway. All right, so I'm gonna keep on cruising down at the bottom. Stop. In the name of love. Sorry. And then we're gonna start again. Stop. Start again. Stop. And then being very careful around this area. Perfect. All right, one more line over here on the edge, just a little. See, I did a little tappy tap because I didn't have a lot of room to just make a line. Now I can go back to my line. Nice and gentle, barely touching the canvas. Got this one little bit right there, man. He is just sticking out. He's bound and determined to make some mess ups for me. That little bristle. All right, so before I do my Swirly Twirly, I'm gonna do my leaf and I'm gonna do my stem. Now this is the part, I had some black that spilled onto my green, so I'm just taking my finger with a little bit of my leftover green, putting it on there. No one will know. It'll look like it's part of the leaf. Just be careful because it's wet now. All right, so around the leaf, gently. Other side of the leaf. Now we did the leaf first because it's behind the stem. Now we're gonna do the stem. Now if you want to get fancy, on mine over here, I made a little line that sort of looped close to the top to make it look a little more 3D. So this is the top of the stem, that's the side of the stem. So if you want to do that, you don't have to, but if you want to, after you make your line across the top, you're gonna make kind of a little curved line like that. Groovy. Okay, swirly twirly time. This is where things get a little difficult. So our swirly twirly, it loops around itself. So we could just trace the whole thing and that would be fine. But if you look at mine over here, I only traced one edge of my swirly twirly and I would stop and start to make it look like it's going over itself. If that's a little too hard, no worries. You can just trace the whole edge, but I'm gonna try and do it so it looks like it's twirling on itself. So I'm gonna do the bottom part here. Sorry for my camera moving. I have a wiggly table today. This one's hard. This is a very tricky thing because our brushes want to make big lines, but we don't want them to. Okay, so now I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna swirl on the inside, being very careful. Sometimes I use the corner of my brush a little bit. Now, I'm following that edge. So I swirled on the inside. I'm gonna skip over, and then I'm gonna keep going with my line on this side of my swirly twirly. I'm gonna follow this one around. Go nice and slow. If you make a mistake, it's okay. Now, because I went over it over here, I'm gonna stop when I get back to the line. Okay, this part looks a little messed up because I had my line for my background. I'm not worried about it though, because in the end, it's all gonna look fine. So I'm gonna skip over. I'm gonna keep tracing my vine. Nice and slow, no rush. So this one, I'm gonna go over it again. Man, that line got a little too fat, Miss Baroody. Okay, now because I went over before, I'm gonna stop, skip over, and then keep going. All right, and now I have my swirly twirly line. Now, on my other one, I added a few lines just to give it a little bit more 3-dimension. So I added a little bit of lines down towards the bottom where the stem meets the pumpkin and a little bit behind the stem and the leaf. So this will actually help me when I messed up my color over here. So just quick, gentle, not much. Nice and gentle. See, sometimes my brush doesn't even hit the canvas. That's how gentle I'm being. And if I do quite a few lines over here, then this doesn't look quite so out of place. Look at that. Oh, that one got a little big. That's all right. You'll make another big one over there. Then it looks like I did it on purpose, right? All right, now I'm done with my pumpkin. Look at that. I think it looks pretty fantastic. If you wanted to add a little something to it, maybe you didn't want to add all those little black lines, you could rinse your brush off. You could grab a little bit of white. How about I do it on my other pumpkin? So you could grab a little bit of white and you could give a little shine. So you could make a couple of white spots on there to make your pumpkin look a little shiny. Totally fine. Now for your words, happy fall. You don't have to write happy fall. You could leave it just the way it is. You could write, it's fall, y'all. You could write pumpkins rule, whatever you want to write. But I would recommend pencil first, okay? And we're not looking for it to be perfect or exact, and definitely be careful because mine's still wet. But if yours is dry, you can put your hand right on your canvas and that's gonna help you out. So mine, I just did capital letters in the other one, but maybe I wanna do cursive letters. So those of you that aren't good at cursive, maybe ask a grown-up. They could write in cursive for you. Maybe you wanna write in all lowercase letters. That's cool too. I think I like lowercase letters, so I think I'm just gonna write a really fat H and a really fat A, and keep going with my fat, happy letters. And there we go. Now you could use your paintbrush for this. You could mix some white and black and make gray like I did. You could just do black, or you can cheat a little bit and you can use a Sharpie marker, which is what I am going to do. And I'm going to do it backwards just because I can. So when you're all done, you'll have a fantastic pumpkin. You'll have a nice little saying on it. You could even just write your name if you want to, so everyone knows how awesome you did. But if you don't want to write your name at the top, you can always put your signature on the bottom. That's what the artists do, so they know who did the painting. So that says Happy Fall. Ooh, I think I need an exclamation mark. Look at that. And then, you know what? Maybe I need some little circles there at the end of the letters. Yeah, the Sharpie marker is being very sad now. I think I got him in some wet paint. I think my blue wasn't quite dry enough. That's all right. I'm gonna give this to somebody who's gonna love it because I made it. So you can keep yours, you can hang it up, you can even put it in a frame, because there are frames that will match this size canvas for sure. All right, and when you're done, I put my signature. Now I do AB because those are my initials, and that's how people know I did the painting. You could put your thumbprint, you could put your first name, you could not sign it at all, or you could sign it on the back. Those of you that got the canvases from our Fin Family crew, you have a place where you put a title, the artist, the medium, that would be acrylic paint, and then your signature. And there you have it. Pumpkin-tastic. So a couple different colors that we used for sure. So this one's lighter, this one's brighter. This one has some white highlights, this one doesn't. This one has only one curly cue, this one has a couple curly cues. My greens are different. My browns are actually pretty darn similar, aren't they? Oh, and I never signed this one. Silly Mrs. Baroody. All right. All right, guys, I hope you had fun with our painting today. Remember, this is just the basics, so you could always make another painting. You have lots of paint left. You could use this on regular paper. You could use it on watercolor paper, or if you have some more canvas or canvas boards around, you could paint on that too. Cannot wait to see all the pumpkins that you guys make. You can make them tall, you can make them fat, you could do 2 pumpkins, you could work with somebody, maybe they make a pumpkin and you make a pumpkin. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. I hope you had fun. I hope you have a great week off from school, and I can't wait to see you guys again. Bye.